Chapter 16 of The Adventures of a Nature Guide by Enos Mills. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. 3 years she grew in sun and shower, when Nature said, "A lovelier flower on earth was never sown. This child I to myself will take, she will be mine, and I will make a lady of my own. Myself will to my darling be both law and impulse, and with me the girl in rock and plain, in earth and heaven, in glade and bower, shall feel an overseeing power to kindle or restrain. She shall be sportive as the fawn that wild with glee across the lawn or up the mountain springs, and hers shall be the breathing balm, and hers the silence and the calm of mute, insensate things. The floating clouds their state shall lend to her, for her the willow bend, nor shall she fail to see, even in the motions of the storm, grace that shall mold the maiden's form by silent sympathy. The stars of midnight shall be dear to her, and she shall lend her ear in many a secret place where rivulets dance their wayward round, and beauty, born of murmuring sound, shall pass into her face." Wordsworth. Chapter 16 The Evolution of Nature Guiding. The primeval guide led his followers along the dim wild life trail marked by hoof and claw. Primitive folk needed to find the way back to camp and to lead their associates to a discovered feast. Woodlore and the peculiar alertness which commonly goes with it made every Indian a born guide. The Indian took reckonings as he moved, and once over a route he knew its landmarks and its resources. Lewis and Clark in 2 emergencies were guided by Sacagawea, a 16-year-old Indian girl who might be called a nature guide. Her mastery of the outdoors enabled her to lead the exploring party across the Rocky Mountains to places she had not been before. Kit Carson and John Colter were excellent guides. Guides have encouraged people to go into new fields, among new scenes, to advance, to get somewhere. Macmillan in 4 Years in the White North tells of a rare incident which illustrates the mastership of man over the obstacles of nature and the ability to use its resources. The thermometer was 36 below, and a blizzard had been roaring for hours when several sledge loads of Eskimos pulled up merrily in front of Macmillan's camp. The Eskimos were bound for 2 or 3 days' journey into the north, where they hoped to live off the country and carried only a few pounds of food and a little oil upon their sledges. They were real explorers, remarked Macmillan. The nature guide finds treasures to right and left for his followers in territory which to most people appears barren. The mention of a guide usually suggests an expert Alpine or Canadian peak climber, a hunting guide in the North, the West, or Africa, an individual who can ride, shoot, cook a meal, pack a horse, and guide a hunting party to its goal. Swiss guides are justly famous for their skill and their bravery on icy, storm-swept precipices, and for their patience and endurance in overcoming the dangers and obstacles that beset the way of those who climb into the sky. Only a few people are physically fitted to follow the Swiss guide, and on the whole peak climbing is a physical triumph. It is well worth while and is certain to continue, but nature guides offer natural history excursions more intellectual in their nature, which may be enjoyed by almost everyone. Natural history has been incidental to all previous types of guides, while to the nature guide it is the essential feature of every trip. The hunter's chief aim is to find and kill the bear, while that of the nature guide is to watch the ways of the bear and to enjoy him. Several years ago, in an editorial story in Country Life in America, I called attention to our need of outdoor guides capable of arousing more interest in natural history. In 1916, I discussed the same idea, guides wanted, in the Saturday Evening Post. The type of guide wanted is the nature guide. Nature guides are still needed, but as yet there is no regular place for his training. While I have trained a few nature guides, there appears to be a need for the state university or a foundation regularly to develop nature guides. It is probable that nature guiding will become a nationwide and distinct profession, and though different, rank with the occupations of authors and lecturers. A nature guide is a naturalist who can guide others to the secrets of nature. Every plant and animal, every stream and stone has a number of fascinating facts associated with it, and about each there are numberless stories. Beavers build houses, bears play, birds have a summer and a winter home thousands of miles apart. Flowers have color and perfume. Every species of life is fitted for a peculiar life zone. The why of these things, how all came about, are of interest. Touched by a nature guide, the wilderness of the outdoors becomes a wonderland. Then, ever after, wherever one goes afield, he enjoys the poetry of nature. This wonderland may be enjoyed around the world forever. Wild birds sing, wild flowers bloom, wherever streams ebb upon the sand or the seasons show their pictures. Almost every locality has its old tree, its rare plant, its striking bit of geology. What natural history treasures are in the wild places of your locality? It would be a happy experience for any individual, either alone or with others, to make a nature survey of his locality with the idea of doing nature guiding or trail school work. During each summer vacation, a number of individuals are enriching their lives by getting intimately acquainted with the birds, animals, and trees of the locality visited. A nature guide in every locality who around his home or in the nearest park could show with fitting stories the wild places, birds, flowers, and animals would add to the enjoyment of everyone who lives in the region or who visits it. Before we realize it, there will be municipal and private nature guides in every city park, official and private nature guides in state parks and in the national parks. Nature guiding is a splendid opportunity for young men and young women. It is a worthwhile life work and one that will add immeasurably to the general welfare of the nation. We have been practicing, first alone and then with assistance, the principles of nature guiding for some years in what is now the Rocky Mountain National Park. We hear that there are plans to use some form of nature guiding in both the Yosemite National Park and the Palisades Interstate Park. The following slogans have grown out of our applications of nature guiding at Long's Peak, Colorado. They have interested many people and have helped extend the idea. A child learns only when he is thinking, and nature's wonders compel him to think. Every child asks questions. The nature guide answers questions intelligently and thereby brings forth other intelligent questions. A nature room in every home contains photographs, nature books, and geological specimens. This would be a help in education. Adventure for old and young. Trail schools. Trail schools always in session, day and night, summer and winter, rain and shine. Trail schools train the senses. The most important part of education has always been through the senses. Dr. Charles Eliot. Entertain your guests at home by a trip with a nature guide. Boost for trail schools in every city park. The few high-class nature guides whom I have known had versatility and a background. They were not only masters of their own localities, but had a good knowledge of the whole outdoors. They had camped and could tell others how to camp, had the resourcefulness to appreciate nature under all conditions, moonlight and starlight, in rain and snow, and could impart that pleasure to others, were masters of woodcraft, knew how to build and to extinguish a campfire, and how to select a campsite, understood horses and the packing of a pack horse, the ways and means of making their parties safe and comfortable, their knowledge of first aid, their vigilance in prevention of accidents, and their mastery of the trail, all became so much a matter of second nature that they were able to give all thought and energy to interesting their people in the natural history features. They had a quick eye for the interesting, the unusual, and the beautiful. They could use a camera. The nature guide who understands human nature and possesses tact and ingenuity is able to hold divergent interests and scattering members of his party together. He appreciates, too, the eloquence of silence and is skillful in controlling, directing, and diverting the conversation of members of his party, lest the beauty of the outdoors be marred by lack of discrimination of someone. He is master of the art of suggestion. He is a leader rather than a teacher. He has control of his party so that he may entertain, instruct, and command without their being aware that he is ruling with a hand of iron when the best results of the trip demand it. Good outdoors books are a part of the nature guide's equipment, and he is able to introduce others to good nature literature. And many of the eloquent nature lectures and much of the outdoor literature of the world may, in the nature of things, be produced by nature guides. It is not necessary for a guide to be a walking encyclopedia. He does not need to impose theories from printed authorities, nor to consider nature books infallible. But a knowledge of the leading nature and scientific books should be a part of his equipment, and may become a part of the enjoyment of those whom he interests. And also the nature guide should know Shakespeare and many of the great poems. A nature guide is not a guide in the ordinary sense of the word, and is not a teacher. At all times, however, he has been rightfully associated with information and some form of education, but nature guiding as we see it is more inspirational than informational. Vigilance in discouraging the picking of wildflowers is essential in any guide. The nature guide arouses interest by dealing in big principles, not with detached and colorless information. He illustrates the principles of pollination, evolution, glaciation, migration of birds, mutual aid, and the fundamental forces of nature wherever he goes. He deals with the manners and customs of birds and animal life, the determining influences of their environment, and their respondent tendencies, rather than with their classification. He creates more permanent interest in the biography of a single tree than in the naming of many trees. Fortunate the individual who has nature for an outside interest. A well-known New York lawyer specializes during vacations on animal life. Any animal, horse, chipmunk, or dog, this he watches and enjoys. It is well for each outdoor individual of limited time, while satisfying a general interest, to specialize on some one thing. A guide also may specialize, but when he is out with a miscellaneous party, he needs to be almost as universal as nature herself. In using the wondrous wealth of natural history, the nature guide has extraordinary opportunities. He can be a mighty factor in helping people to determine how they will best spend their leisure hours. People are made and nations perpetuated through the right use of leisure time. The following outline is a plan that we have used effectively in arousing interest in many an object. It may be adapted and used to fix interest upon any species of tree or plant, bird or animal, with modifications used in discussing geology. The idea of this plan is to give an interesting biography of every object considered, its name, classification, and family being wholly secondary. Wind and water, birds and animals, scatter tree seeds, give them adventurous transportation in their search for a home. Most seeds are lost or destroyed. A few find an unoccupied place and start to grow. Their place may be a favorable or unfavorable one. A little tree peeps up into the big world and unfolds its leaves. It may be eaten by insects or by animals, burned by fire, trampled out, or uprooted. A number may be injured and still live on, and a few grow on uninjured. Each year a tree puts on a thin coat of wood on the outside just beneath the bark. This coat grows over every twig and limb and the tree trunk. A tree grows higher by building at the top. A limb on the side that a small boy or girl can just reach will never be any further from the earth. As the tree grows larger and larger, it may be preyed upon by ants, borers, beetles, and woodlice, by gypsy moth, and by caterpillars. But the chickadees, nuthatches, and other birds will eat the woodlice and the caterpillars, and Dr. Woodpecker will dig in after the borers and beetles. Trees live from 40 years to a few thousand years of age, and during their long life they stand in one place. They cannot travel, cannot run away from danger. In one place they face storm, wind, and drought. Every tree has an adventurous life. It is a home for the birds. It shelters plants and gives shade and beauty to the world. It may bear fruit. It may become a flagpole or a ship mast and sail around the world. Some trees like wet places, others dry places, some cold climates, others hot climates. The pollination of trees, their evolutionary history, their geological records, ever are a delight. Every flower that blooms, like every old tree, has an adventurous life, a brief and stirring biography. So too has every piece of red sandstone and every great cobblestone in the lowlands. The red stone may once have been a piece of dark granite on top of the snowy peak, or the cobblestone may have been torn from a cliff and shaped by a glacier that carried it for 1,000 miles or more. Every handful of soil has a story stranger than any produced in fairyland. The above plan can be adjusted and adapted to almost any subject under discussion. To have made friends with one tree is better than to have learned the names of many trees, to have shared its experiences through the seasons, to have watched the play of sunlight through the branches, the storms bursting over its head, the rain deepening the color of its bark. This is to feel the universal kinship of nature, whether the tree be in a city park, is a lone tree, or one of a noble forest. Realizing that people lose so much through their erroneous beliefs, I am trying so to feature the wilderness world that children will early adjust their lives to its splendid influences. Altitude is helpful. No American animal is ferocious. Nature must be classed as friendly. Wild animals and birds play frequently and with enthusiasm. Nearly all species of birds and animals are endeared to home. That is, they live within the bounds of a local territory, and many have a permanent home. Nothing equals the helpfulness of nature. But unfortunately, the vast majority of people suppressed by busy and conventional conditions believe the outdoor excursions are uncomfortable and dangerous, that altitude is harmful, that most wild animals are ferocious, that nature, and especially the weather, is unfriendly, that animals are dull beasts, led by instinct, and are irresponsible, wandering gypsies. On the whole, it is believed that nature has nothing of value to encourage association with it. Nature guides can help in having nature appreciated at its true worth, in cultivating hospitality to change of nature, and in welcoming all kinds of weather and each new experience. Pioneer men and women have in all ages been famed for their alertness and individuality. They are keen and alive, and they are happy to be living. Whitman makes the astounding assertion that all grand poems, all heroic deeds, were conceived in the open air. Certainly it is true that nature had something to do with the education and the inspiration of many of the great men and women who lived heroic lives, who did much to promote the glory of the growing world. The magnificent influence of nature is revealed by many poets. Wordsworth eloquently pictures this in 3 Years She Grew, William Cullen Bryant in Thanatopsis, and Shakespeare in many lines, especially in the outburst of universal sympathy in King Lear's magnificent prayer on the storm-wild heath. Although Australia and New Zealand were settled chiefly by convicts, these convicts, under another sun and sky, with new opportunities and with the many-sided helpfulness of nature, quickly developed people as kind, alert, and unselfish as any upon the globe. Mother Nature is ever ready to train the growing child. By using our wonderful national parks or other wild places, we may give the boys and girls of today even better nature training than the pioneers received from their environment. Huxley says, "Knowledge gained at second hand from books or hearsay is infinitely inferior in quality to knowledge gained at first hand by direct observation and experience with nature." The poetic interpretation of nature was a prominent factor in the education of Helen Keller. In The Story of My Life, she says, "For a long time I had no regular lessons. Even when I studied most earnestly, it seemed more like play than work. Everything Miss Sullivan taught me she illustrated by a beautiful story or a poem. She introduced dry technicalities of science little by little, making every subject so real that I could not help remembering what she taught." Darwin, who appears to be the most influential man of the last century, was anything but a bookman. He met the requirements of school and college with difficulty and with reluctance, but field excursions aroused his powers and gave splendid purpose to his life. Elizabeth Cady Stanton as a girl was fascinated with running water, moonlight, and the mystery and sounds of the night. Often after the nurse had tucked her in, she climbed out on the window sill and sat listening and wondering for an hour or two. As a boy, Humboldt was kept out of school and encouraged to ramble in the wilds, thus developing initiative and independence. Humboldt and Lincoln appear to have been chiefly indebted to nature for their vision which they afterward helped realize for the world. Froebel appreciated the value of natural history material for little children. Charles G. Adams, perhaps the leading authority on ecology, has pointed out the significance of the response of animal and plant life to environment. Recent museum groups embody the spirit of nature guiding, giving the manners and customs, the friends and enemies of the wild life. The Nature Study Idea by Liberty H. Bailey is the most comprehensive and complete discussion concerning the helpfulness of nature that I have seen. His attitude is stated from a number of angles, and he strongly commends the poetic interpretation of nature. He says, "The subject, nature study, is not a formal part of the curriculum, and thereby it is not perfunctory, and herein lies much of the value, in the fact that it cannot be reduced to a system, is not cut and dried, and cannot become a part of rigid school methods. Whatever the method, the final results of nature teaching is the development of a keen personal interest in every natural object and phenomenon. Fundamentally, nature study is seeing what one looks at and drawing proper conclusions from what one sees. Nature study is not the teaching of facts for the sake of facts. It is not giving information merely. The artist and the poet know this world, and they do not know it by mere knowledge or by analysis. It appeals to them in moods, not in details." End of chapter 16.